Hello friends, today we are going to be painting fall trees. So for this project you will need some paint, and on this little paint palette I have brown paint, some red, yellow, and orange, which are our warm colors. We've learned about our warm colors in class. They look hot. We say woo hot when we see those colors. And then we have our neutral colors over here, which are brown. And if you do not have liquid paint like this, you can use a watercolor set, which after I'm done doing the painting with the acrylic or tempera paint over here, I think this is one's or acrylic, but you can use temperas. I will show you how you can do a painting with the watercolor sets. If you want to stay on the video for a second, watch with the watercolor sets. This is my girl's watercolor set, and you can do a very similar painting with watercolor set. If you do not have any watercolors or paint at home, on my YouTube station, I also have how to draw trees and how to make tree collages, where you would just need some drawing materials and some glue and paper, or you can make your own watercolors by mixing food coloring and a little bit of water. So you can try that at home as well. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with our neutral color, which is our brown, and we're going to start by making a tree trunk. Now I'm starting with a light blue piece of paper. You can start with a white piece of paper if you want and go back in and paint in your background. Sometimes it's hard to paint around the tree branches and the leaves though. So you can either leave your background white for this particular one if you don't have a blue piece of paper, or you can paint your paper blue, let it dry, and then paint over it with your tree. But I'm just going to start on this, and it's fine if you're doing it on a plain white piece of paper. I'm just starting with blue to look like sky in the background. And I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to do a pretty simple tree. Now you make your tree as fancy as you want. I'm going to start a little bit from the bottom here so you can see. That way you can leave a little bit of room for the roots in the ground in a minute. And you can make your tree as fancy as you want. I'm just going to show you how to do a simple tree. I'm going to start, add a little bit of water to my paint. It's a little thick. It's a good thing about water-based paint. You can thin it out with a little bit of water. But I'm going to start with 2 lines up. And brown is a neutral color. We've been learning about our color groups in class. Primary colors, secondary colors, cool colors, warm colors, and neutral colors. So it looks like I've drawn like a big number 11, if you see that. Big, tall number 11, 2 lines up. Okay. Now once I get to that point, I'm going to fill it in. Add a little bit of water to my paint if it's thick. I'm going to fill it in. Now I'm using acrylic paint here, but you could use tempera paint as well, which are both water-based paint, so you could thin it out with a little bit of water if it's thick. And then I'm going to make sure it's all filled in brown. And this is going to be our tree trunk. Our neutral color. Remember, neutral colors don't look hot or cold. One of our main color groups. Okay, now once I do that, now I'm going to add a couple of little roots down the bottom. Roots are important for a tree to be able to get nutrients and water from the ground. So I'm going to draw a couple of roots out. You don't have to do too many. Just 2 is fine. If you want to do 3, that's fine too. It's just going to give it a little bit of a base to sit on. Now I'm going to take it and I'm going to do what I usually call in class, and those of you who have drawn trees with me before have probably heard me use this term, a Y tree. The reason why I call it a Y tree is it looks like a big letter Y. So we go out this way to start. Remember, not all trees are shaped exactly alike. If I go outside, I can't find 2 in my backyard that are shaped exactly alike. So if yours doesn't look just like mine, that's okay. But I'm just showing you simple steps to draw an easy, or paint an easy tree. You can add your own details to it. So it looks like a letter Y right now. Fill it in. Try to get it nice and solid brown. Okay, so now I have a simple Y. Okay, now if you go outside and look, if you're close to a window, look outside. The trees branch off in all different directions. It's not just two big branches on the tree. So we want to give it a little bit more look of a realistic tree. We're just going to start making branches by just painting organic lines, so just natural looking lines. They can be a little squiggly, they can be straight, they can bend, they can go from thick to thin, coming off of each of your Y branches. So we're going to put some on this side, and then we're going to come over here and do some on this side. Remember, the good thing about having Miss Hoffman on a video is if I'm going too fast, you can pause me. So anytime you need to pause, you can pause me. You know, even my girls, even though they live with me and can have me show them how to paint or draw anytime, sometimes they like to get on my YouTube channel and draw from Mommy's videos, which is funny. And they will sometimes pause. They say they have to pause Mommy because Mommy's going too fast. So you can pause anytime you need to. All right, I'm gonna do little branches off of this side too. Just anywhere I think it looks like it would look good to have a branch. I can even have little branches coming off my big branches like this. So you can see I have little branches coming off my big branches, and I have branches going in all directions. And that's going to give us a lot of space to put all our leaves hanging on these branches. Fall is my favorite season because I love all the warm color leaves, the reds, the yellows, the oranges. I love to go outside in the fall. I'm one of those people that loves everything pumpkin spice and apple. I love apple stuff and pumpkin stuff. All right, so now I got my branches the way I want it. You keep adding branches. You can add skinny ones and little bitty tiny skinny ones and thick ones and any way you want. Go back over if you see any little spots in your tree that looks a little bare, you can go back in and fill it in a little bit more. If you want to be really fancy, you can go back in and add some texture into your tree bark by getting a lighter color brown and just really lightly doing some lines here and there in the tree with a lighter color brown or a darker color brown, and it will give it a little bit of texture to look like tree bark. That's a step that you can skip if you don't have two colors of brown, or you can always mix a little bit of white paint in with the brown that you have to make it a little lighter, but it gives it a little bit of texture. Now, I'm gonna rinse out my brush so it doesn't dry out. Always remember to take care of your brushes. And now I'm gonna show you how to do a fun technique that gives the tree a little bit of texture. Remember, texture is how something feels, but in art, texture can also be how something looks like it feels. So we can give this top of the tree look like a fluffy texture, even though it's not actually gonna be fluffy, is it? It's kind of like a fake texture. Now, I got a thicker brush here. Now, this will work with a smaller brush. It just will take a little bit more of time, and I can show you how to do it with both, okay? But I'm gonna start with my thicker brush, and I'm just going to barely dip the tips of the bristles down in the paint. So I'm going to just barely dip the tips of the bristles in the paint. You can see how it's barely dipped. And I'm going to blot, blot, blot. If you've ever done a stenciling on a shirt, you sometimes will blot, blot, blot like that. If you've ever done sponge painting on a pumpkin or on artwork, it's similar. So I'm gonna just do this little technique where I'm just taking a little bit of paint on the end of the brush, and I'm gonna go blot, 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 until my paint starts to look like it's running out. And I'm gonna dip it. I can dip it in red, orange, or yellow. So I'm gonna dip it in a little bit of red here. Blot, 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 blot. And look, it gives it this texture that looks like leaves on the ends of the tree. It's really a cool texture. Okay, I'm gonna dip in a little bit of orange now. Now, if I don't have orange paint, what two colors can I mix to make the orange? Red and yellow, you're right. So you have to mix the red and yellow to make the orange if you don't have orange, but I have some orange already pre-mixed here, so I'm just gonna use it straight. Blot, blot, blot. I think it would look good with a little bit of yellow right there. Look like the sun's shining on it. Need a little bit more. Notice I'm not rinsing my brush out in between dipping these colors. It's because I want them to kind of blend together. So most of the time I'm always telling y'all, rinse your brush out before you mix colors. But for this particular one, I kind of want them to mix together. So I'm gonna take some more, blot, 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 blot. Want a little bit more yellow over here. Notice I have some yellow on the end of my brush. Blot, blot, blot. Notice that the orange in my brush is still mixing in. Gives it a nice, realistic fall tree look. Notice I have a poster board underneath my painting. That's because I didn't want to get paint all over my dining room table, okay? So if you're painting somewhere inside your house, you're probably going to want to put some newspaper or something underneath it before you get too far into this blotting. Blot, 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 blot. Which I think I have a lot up there. Now, I'm going to get some red and just go back in. Go in a few areas that I think need a little bit more dark. And I'm pretty happy with the way that tree looks. And if a little bit of brown from the limbs mix in, that's okay, because sometimes in the fall, the leaves turn brown too. Now I'm gonna scoot up my painting just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Now I want it to look like the leaves have fallen all over the ground around the bottom of the tree. So it's okay if you cover the roots up a little bit, because realistically, if the leaves have fallen all around the tree, you're not going to be able to see the whole root of the tree because it's going to be covered up with leaves. So I'm going to blot some leaves down here, just like the same technique I'm doing on the top of the tree. Mix in some yellow and some orange. So it looks like a nice, looks like we need to rake the leaves outside on this day. Nice fall scene. All right. And I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And when I was done, I could go back in and paint some trees in the background or some hills in the background if I wanted to, or if I like the way this looks with just this one big tree in our foreground. I can sign my name to my picture. Always remember to sign your art and be proud of it. And you have a beautiful fall tree that was actually really easy to do, and you don't have to tell anybody it was so easy. You could just hang it up and let everybody be impressed with your awesome skills. Now, if you have a watercolor set or watered down food coloring, it's a very similar technique. I'm doing it on a white piece this time instead of a blue piece of paper. But you would just take your watercolor set. I'm using my girl's watercolor set. It's a little messy, sorry. I'm gonna water down my brown paint. Make sure that is brown, yep. I would do the very similar technique. I would do 2 lines up. I'm gonna do the tree really fast since you already saw these steps, okay? So I'm sorry if I'm going too fast, you can kind of pause me, but I'm gonna do it fast since you've already seen all these steps once. You would do the roots. You would paint the tree branches. You would paint the limbs. And you can use, again, if you don't have paint at home, I have on my YouTube channel how to draw a tree, how to do a tree collage. But if you really love to paint and you want to paint and you don't have any paints at home, you can use watered down food coloring, a little bit of Kool-Aid mix and some water. Just ask for an adult to help so you don't make a mess, okay, friends? All right, so after I get my tree the way I want it, then I'm gonna rinse out my brush and get a little bit of red, and it's not gonna give the same amount of thick texture as a tempera paint or a acrylic paint would. You can see it almost looks like it's been sponge painted there with the end of our brush, but it's still gonna give a really cool effect. You take the end of your paintbrush and you do the same technique. You just do it with the tip of your brush there, and it makes a beautiful watercolor painting. The same technique, and you just keep doing that. Rinse out your brush before you switch to your orange. And then you would rinse out your brush before you switch to your yellow. I've had friends ask me when we do this project before, can I add some green to my tree? Of course you can. Sometimes when you go outside in the fall, the trees still have a lot of green in them. There's a tree across the road from my house right now that is starting to turn red, but it has big patches of green in it too. It's beautiful. So you can add some greens in there if you want to, but I was just focusing mainly on our warm colors. Remember, those are the colors that look hot. We go woo hot when we see them, and they're red, orange, and yellow. All right, so we have a very, very pretty tree, and then you could paint down the bottom too. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to see your fall paintings. If you make them, please send them to me. I would love to see them. Bye, guys.